Grad school, along with many other academic and professional spaces, wasn't built for first-gen and BIPOC folks like us. And yet here you are, navigating it all, often without the adequate support you deserve. That's why I created Office Hours with me, Doctora Yvette, a budget-friendly, high-impact coaching and consulting space designed specifically for first-gen, BIPOC, and or neurodivergent grad students, postdocs, and early career professionals. It's a 50-minute small group drop-in session where you can ask me anything about productivity, imposter phenomenon, burnout, setting boundaries, grad school apps, funding and financial literacy, career development, and more. You can even stop by and just have me chat it up with you about a recent podcast episode if that works for you. You'll receive strategies and a supportive space to figure things out together. Spots are capped at 8 participants to keep it intimate and interactive and to make sure I can answer everyone's questions. Sessions happen twice a month for a limited time. To be honest, I'm not sure how long I'll keep this offer available. So sign up now at the link in the show notes and let's get you the support that you deserve. Raise one finger if you've ever felt like a time management failure because you can't stick to your perfect schedule. Raise another finger if you've ever felt personally victimized by a beautifully color-coded calendar that, again, you couldn't stick to. Raise another finger if you agree that time blocking is the kale smoothie of productivity advice. Everybody says that you should love it, but what if you just don't have that acquired taste? And raise another finger if someone once told you that, oh, you would be so much more successful if you could just manage your time better. All right, raise one last finger if you feel like your to-do list is laughing at your schedule every single day because you just can't stick to it. If any of this resonates, then this episode is for you because I'm going to be talking about the ever popular or common conundrum of what to do when time blocking doesn't work. Welcome to the award-winning Grad School Femtoring Podcast, the place for first-gen BIPOCs to listen in on inclusive grad school stories and learn about personal development and productivity tips. This is Doctora Yvette Martinez-Vu, a certified coach, consultant, and author, and I will be serving as your Femtor, providing you with insider knowledge to help you reach your personal and professional goals. Welcome back, everyone, to another episode of the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. Today, I have a really fun episode full of time management strategies that are flexible enough for those of us for whom time blocking doesn't quite work out. And why doesn't it always work for everyone? We'll start there. Well, firstly, it assumes that there is such a thing as an ideal perfect schedule and that we can stick to it every single time. It also assumes that we can accurately account for how long things take. And if you're like me, a lot of us will underestimate how long things take. We think, oh, it's only going to take an hour or two. And then in actuality, it takes us more time. So time blocking doesn't always allow us to account for those inaccuracies. Also, I work with clients who have very full lives. And because they have full lives, that means that life happens. A lot of my clients are self-identified women. They're people with ovaries. We go through fluctuations in our energy and our cognitive functioning that's impacted by our monthly cycles. And also just in general, I work with a lot of folks who are neurodivergent, who may have ADHD, and for them, focusing can be an issue sometimes, or they might find themselves feeling more distracted, or they might just be busy moms that have a lot of interruptions in their lives. In fact, A couple folks I work with, I found it so interesting. They have their workspace set up in their living space. So it's no wonder that they have so many disruptions when you've got kids, you've got a partner, and you're working in the middle of the living space. Come on now. So in any case, that means that if you time block and that doesn't account for the many interruptions you might be dealing with or the shifting of your energy levels that you might be dealing with, it might not always work. And then, of course, there's just some of us for whom, even if we work well with a routine and with a schedule, sometimes it just feels too restrictive. Sometimes it feels almost too rigid. And I say that as someone who I'm actually, I guess you could call me a rigid person in that I thrive in routines. But sometimes if it's a set time and a set time block, that can feel too strict, too rigid, and that can increase your stress or decrease your motivation. We don't want that. And then, of course, so many of us, because we have full lives, we have a lot of obligations. That means that sometimes emergencies happen, sometimes things that are urgent come up, and that time block doesn't allow for us to be able to be as responsive to the things that come up that are important to us. So whether that's caregiving responsibilities, community work, or any other things that are important to you, that can also sometimes cut into your time blocking. So what do we do about this? I'm going to give you 8 different strategies. I'm going to try to get through them relatively quickly. I want to keep this episode to approximately 15 to 20 minutes, and I've already taken the first 5 minutes just to introduce this topic. So let's get straight to it with the first one, which is consider task batching by energy levels. So remember how I mentioned a lot of us have shifting energy levels. Instead of time blocking, what if you group your tasks based on which ones are for high energy and which ones are for low energy moments? And that way you can gauge how you're feeling and how much energy you have and what you can actually do that matches that energy level. The second thing you can try is priority-based to-do lists. Specifically, I want to recommend the 3 things method. So stick to no more than 3 things per day. That doesn't mean that you can't do more than 3 things, but it just means that every day you identify your top 3 things. So for today, instead of looking at my ever long to-do list that's just going to haunt you because you can never finish it, reminding yourself, okay, today's mini to-do list is just these 3 things. Forget about the rest, focus on just these 3 things. And if you can focus on these 3 things that push the needle forward, then great. Sometimes that list becomes just one thing, depending on how I'm feeling. If my energy is just really, really low or I'm not feeling that great, well, I mean, it depends. If I'm really, really not feeling great, sometimes I just can't do any work at all. And it is what it is. But if I'm not feeling great, but I'm still able to do some work, depending on my energy levels, sometimes it's not even my top 3. It's like, what is the most important thing that I can get done today that's going to move the needle forward in terms of my biggest goals? So priority-based to-do lists and reminding yourself of your top 3 things is the second strategy. The third strategy is adaptive and flexible timers. And so it's similar to implementing a Pomodoro method, but with the Pomodoro method, usually you have 25 minutes of work and 5 minutes of break time, and then you do that a couple of times, and then you take a longer break. But in this case, you want to set your timer in short focus bursts and adjust it based on how focused you are in that moment. So if you're struggling to focus, do the shorter timers. If you are very focused, you can prolong the timer and go in longer bursts of time. So instead of feeling like, oh my gosh, I only have to stick to these 30-minute time blocks that are part of my Pomodoro, what if you could start with a 15-minute timer. And then if you start to gain focus, maybe increase it to 40 minutes. And if you start to gain focus, maybe increase it to 60 minutes, and then see how it feels and work based off that. The fourth strategy is time tracking, not time blocking. So instead of time blocking and trying to guess how long things are going to take, going back and documenting how long things actually took, and then learning from that reflection. So once you assess and you have an idea of, well, last time I did this, it took me about this long. Now you can predict more accurately how long it's going to take you. And I've done this before. I do this for my speaking engagements where I usually give myself approximately 10 hours to prep for a speaking engagement total, like from beginning to end. That includes the time to prepare my slides, that includes the time to rehearse, that includes the time to ideate, etc., to check feedback from the entity hiring me. I also sometimes ask my clients to get their students to ask questions in advance, so I make sure I address those questions throughout my slides, etc. So all that, no more than 10 hours. And if I know historically it'll take me no more than 10 hours, then before a speaking engagement, I have to make sure that I have enough time, whether you want to call it time blocking or not, but it doesn't have to be strict time blocks, but I just have to know that I have enough time based on the days that I have carved out to do this type of work to get that done. So time tracking is great if you can do it. I know it's not always easy to time track, but it is worth it for the types of tasks that you do often. Hi, Femties. I'm gently interrupting the show to let you know that you can be a sponsor for the Grad School Femtoring Podcast. Whether you're a small business owner, a book author, or part of an educational startup looking to reach a loyal audience, this is your chance to showcase your work. My listeners are first-gen BIPOC college students, grad students, and early career professionals who value mentorship, education, and empowerment. If it sounds like a fit, head to the show notes to learn more about sponsoring an episode. Strategy number 5 is all about making sure that you give yourself buffer time. So if you do want a time block, but you notice that maybe you're not being as accurate with your time blocking, instead of sticking to rigid blocks, just adding some buffer. So just in case you need extra time, adding some wiggle room in your schedule. And I say this because, again, just to remind you, most of us will underestimate how long something will take. And so if you give yourself more buffer time, that can reduce your stress and prevent burnout. Even if you know how long something will take, it's still nice to give yourself a buffer so that way, in case life happens and you, for some reason, are taking longer than usual, you have accounted for that. Strategy 6 is to consider working based off rituals rather than strict or rigid routines. And I really, really love this one because it's really about developing a rhythm of how you do your work rather than a rigid schedule. You have to start at X hour, otherwise you've already failed. So this can look like having a rhythm of every day after breakfast and after I get ready, I will write. Something along those lines of just having a rhythm. And I apply this in my schedule too, in that my mornings are usually slower, and they're slower intentionally because I usually don't feel my best in the mornings, but I have a rhythm of what I do every morning. And I do have a set start time in terms of my meetings, but it's usually later than when there are some days I could start a little bit earlier, but I don't know how I'm going to feel in any given morning. So I account for them. I give myself that like wiggle room before my first meeting. And I have this set ritual of these things that I do regularly to make sure that I am performing at my best, or that I can manage my symptoms my best every day. So rituals instead of rigid schedules. Number 7 is applying and I'm so sorry, I don't have the name of the entrepreneur that came up with this time system, but the time system is called the entrepreneurial time system of having focus days, having buffer days, and then having rest days. So giving yourself dedicated days that you have focused work, and those are the days where you try to reduce or not have any meetings, and then giving yourself buffer days of the days that you have more meetings or you have more that you have to get done, more errands, etc. You're just doing more. And so you only do the smaller tasks that don't require a lot of energy on those buffer days. So having a combination of dedicated focus days, buffer days, and of course, rest days, because you want to make sure that you are restoring yourself too, and you're not just working all the time. Strategy 8 is applying the Eisenhower matrix to your schedule. And so by this, we mean, if you don't know what the Eisenhower matrix is, it's a prioritization method, and it literally looks like a quadrant with 4 squares. And in that quadrant, you've got one square that includes the urgent and important tasks, another square that includes the important but not urgent tasks, a third square that includes urgent but not important tasks, and then a fourth square that includes neither urgent nor important tasks. And ideally, you want to live in the important but not urgent square, because these are the things that are going to help to move the needle forward, and you don't want to wait until it becomes urgent, because that's when your stress increases. And a lot of the people I work with, they live in that urgent and important square. And sometimes they're doing stuff that's neither urgent nor important, and we got to cut that out. So how do you apply this into your calendaring or your time management? It's scheduling in the things that move the needle forward first, or if you don't want to schedule it in, making it a ritual to start with those things that matter most first. So start with the not urgent and important tasks first in the days that you can prioritize focus work, or in the days that are dedicated work days for you. Those were the 8 strategies. Oh my goodness. I went through them pretty quickly, although I'm still going to be slightly over time, but that's fine because y'all are still here with me. So just as a review, the first strategy was task batching by energy levels. Strategy 2 was to apply the 3 things method and focusing on 3 things per day. Strategy 3 is an adaptive timer method. So instead of a strict Pomodoro, you do 15, 40, 60-minute sprints, or whatever timed sprint works for you. Strategy 4 is time tracking instead of time blocking. Strategy 5 is giving yourself buffer time. So that way, even if you underestimate, you still have enough time to get your work done. Strategy 6 is focusing on rituals instead of rigid schedules. Strategy 7 is the entrepreneurial time system of scheduling focus, buffer, and rest days. And strategy 8 is using the Eisenhower matrix in your scheduling so that you schedule in the most important but not urgent tasks first. All right, that's it for today's episode. I hope that you found at least one strategy that you're willing to implement. And if it doesn't work, try out something else. It's all iterative. Eventually, you will find what works and you will develop your own system. And before you know it, you're going to be feeling pretty good about what you're getting done and doing work that matters most to you. And just to close things off, I want to remind you that your identities matter. Your growth matters, your sustainable productivity matters, and your holistic success matters. Join us again for more Femtoring next week. And as always, I'll talk to you all next time. Thanks so much for listening. If you liked what you heard, here are 3 ways you can support the show. The first is to make sure you're subscribed and leave a review on Apple Podcasts. The second way is to get your copy of my free resource kit linked in my show notes. This kit includes tools, worksheets, and podcast playlists on all things grad school, productivity, and personal development. The third way to support my show is to follow me on social media. You can find me on Instagram with the handle @Grad School Femtoring and on LinkedIn by searching my name. Thanks again for listening, and until next time.